Welcome to the Feeling Better podcast. My name is Maria, and I'm the host of this podcast and the author of the book, The Feeling Better 10-4 program, that teaches you a practical, effective, inspirational 10-week program to help you overcome your compulsive gambling addiction. Thanks so much for being here. In today's episode, I'm going to be reading from my new book, Imbalances, The Addict's Guide to Fixing Our Broken Lives. This week is Chapter 2, The Imbalance of Self-Worth, Value, and Influence. So yeah, this morning, I deleted both my Instagram and Facebook account. Yep, I know. People are going to be like, "What? Are you nuts? That's impulsive and weird." What I hadn't mentioned before was that I had reactivated my Facebook account a while back in order to use Facebook Marketplace, so I could sell some stuff there to make a little bit of money. I used it to help sell my hubby's vehicle, and it was also nice to have Marketplace to find local people selling firewood for winter and produce that I can't find at the farmer's market. Like, there's this guy that I buy garlic from who grows bulk heirloom garlic varieties. And of course, inevitably, I started going there and lurking. Not often, but more than I would have liked. I never downloaded the app, though. I just used it on my phone's browser. And for some reason, the browser version really sucked on my iPhone. It cut off the whole right side of my feed so that I couldn't see all the words of someone's post. And it meant that if I did see a post that maybe I wanted to comment on, I couldn't, because the post button wasn't showing up. I could like something because the like button and other reaction emojis were visible, but I couldn't post a comment from my phone. If I absolutely needed to comment, I had to get on my laptop to do it. I did have the Instagram app on my phone, though, and letting go of that account was a much more difficult decision. I've had an Instagram account since 2011. As I mentioned before, I primarily used Instagram as a personal, private repository of my own photos and videos. Sure, at one point I had a few hundred followers, mostly people I knew, but back last winter I had whittled down the people that I followed to mostly homesteading, gardening, cooking, and Christian people. And over the last year or so, I'd really gotten into watching Instagram Reels. There's a lot of great content there. News, Christians reading devotionals, or people posting inspirational stories, clips of pastors preaching on various topics, tons of homesteading and gardening and cooking reels, and of course, funny things. My hubby and I had gotten into the habit these last few months of sending each other reels. It's a goofy but fun thing that we did. We both love humor and funny things, and not gonna lie, we both adore funny cat videos and reels of cute kids doing cute things. So we'd always send these reels that we think that each other would enjoy back and forth. So why did I do that? Why did I delete both accounts all of a sudden? Well, for starters, both were a major distraction. Maybe I do have more tendencies to addiction than I realized. Or maybe the AI and algorithms were better than I gave them credit for. But more often than not, I'd find myself scrolling through reels or scanning through my Facebook feed, and before I knew it, an hour had gone by. Or I'd have my earbuds in listening to a church sermon, and while I was listening, I'd play reels with the sound off, not giving my full attention to the message I was listening to. Whenever I was bored, tired, antsy, anxious, or had some free downtime on my hands, I'd hang out on Insta Reels, enjoying the literally endless feed of content from people around the world. Sometimes I'd marvel at how fake and scripted things were. I like to think that I have a discerning mind, but more than once I showed my hubby something that I thought was amazing, or incredible, or super funny, and he just shook his head and said, "Honey, they're just acting. That really didn't happen." Or, "You know that's fake, right? That's CG, computer generated." Yeah, no, I didn't know that. What a letdown. Other times, I'd look at reels and posts with envy. A middle-aged woman who had been overweight, who dieted and exercised relentlessly and lost a ton of weight and could now rock a bathing suit, far better than I could. A friend's new farmhouse on 40 acres that was gorgeously decorated and clean and spacious. Another friend's garden beds that were bigger, better, and way more beautiful than my overgrown jungle-like garden. My former coworker's little granddaughter, who was so adorably cute and said the funniest things. A woman who showed off the she shed that her husband built for her. Another gal's new hairstyle that made her look 10 years younger, while I haven't even colored my gray roots in over 3 months. It all made me feel less than, falling short, envious of all that they had that I didn't. Then there was the privacy issue. True story, this happened last night. This was the catalyst that caused me to seriously consider deleting my social media for good. I had been scrolling through my Instagram feed last night, and I saw a promotional ad for these little organizer trays that you could mount on walls with multiple compartments in them. They were designed to store underwear and socks, but they didn't look cheesy or tacky hung on a wall. You pulled out the tray to put in, or get out, what you needed, and then you pushed the tray back in, kind of like wall-mounted drawers, I guess. Immediately, I thought, oh wow, that's really cool. We could really use that. Because for some bizarre reason, our old farmhouse only has one closet, and it's not even a very big one at that. Our bedroom has a closet that's about 7 feet wide and maybe 3.5 to 4 feet deep, with one rod to hang clothes. And that's it. No broom closet, or linen closet, or hall closet, or coat closet. I do have a walk-in pantry, thank God. I have no idea what I'd do without that, since our outdated kitchen doesn't offer much in the way of cabinet space. Remember that ginormous house I used to rent on 160 acres that I talked about before? That house had the most amazing storage. One huge walk-in pantry with pull-out shelves and cabinets. And then another, way bigger cellar-type pantry room that was the size of a large bedroom, lined with thick, sturdy shelves. And it had a ton of closets. Now, I've often heard people say that big houses aren't all that great because it just allows a person to accumulate more stuff, more clutter. But that wasn't true in my case. In that house with the 2 pantries and 7 closets and various built-in wall cabinets, I had a place for everything, and everything had its place. But in this small farmhouse with no storage, I feel like I'm surrounded by clutter, relying on totes and boxes and bags to store things in, and no matter how hard I try, I can't seem to ever find anything or keep anything organized. Anyway, I'm getting off track here. So I took a screenshot of those wall-mounted drawers so that maybe one day in the future when I'm more financially flush, I could buy a few of them to try out. But this morning, when I was checking my email, I saw in my inbox that I had a welcome/thank you email from them with a 15% off coupon that I could use on my first purchase. Excuse me? Seriously? Are we really at the point that if we're on social media and we take a screenshot of a product or service, then Facebook or Instagram or Meta or whatever they're calling themselves these days will sell that advertising company our email and contact info so they can directly spam us with promotional offers in our inbox? Yeah, that ticked me off. Royally. I don't know why, but that made me hotter than a Carolina Reaper. It felt like such an invasion of my privacy. I'm sure every one of you experienced the situation where you typed something into Google and then for weeks afterwards saw ads on your social media news feeds for it. Yeah, I made that mistake a while back Googling up Solo Stove when one of my coworkers told me that he bought one. Living out in the country, we simply build bonfires in our fire pit, so I had no clue what that even was. Then I Googled it, and I'm telling you, after that, I saw promotional ads for Solo Stoves everywhere. It was so annoying. I didn't want one or need one, and it didn't matter how many times I tried to remove it by clicking, I don't want to see this ad, or this ad is irrelevant to me. In fact, up until yesterday, I was still seeing ads for online casinos in my social media news feeds. I must have clicked remove ad or report ad at least 24 times, and yet they still continued to appear. I'm not joking. I'm sure you all experienced this too, where I had a conversation with my husband about something, And sure enough, there were ads pertaining to my topic the next day on my social media feeds. Don't let anyone try to tell you that our phones are not listening to us. That's crap. Those lint lickers. Remember my episode about the online casinos and how they have verbiage in their terms and conditions that state they can use whatever means they deem necessary without limitation to verify our identity? Yeah, I would not be surprised in the least if the big tech companies had similar policies that we're not even aware of. A bigger problem for me with social media, though, to be perfectly honest, was just seeing how lost and misguided people are. How much people immerse themselves into things that undoubtedly come from the devil. Whether subtle or sometimes even overt, sexual content, evil things that felt dark and occultish, too much personal information about their needs and wants and negative emotional feelings, idols that they live for and are obsessed with. Hey, if you haven't yet listened to my episode about idols, collections, and idolatry, make a mental note to catch it later. It's episode 23 that went live on July 9th. No matter how hard I attempted to cultivate my newsfeed or Reels algorithm to show me only the content that I wanted to see, it was impossible to cut it all out completely because a lot of it came from my friends, and they were seemingly oblivious to how concerning it was. For example, there's a thing I saw a few weeks ago that has really been bothering me, sitting on my heart, weighing down my soul, and I'm going to tell you about it. Now, I'm not judging. I'm just, sad, I guess? It was more than a little disturbing. You see, the end of August, early September marked the start of the school year for kids. And many parents, being parents, proudly shared their kids' first day of school pictures. You know what I'm talking about. Little children that stood outside their house wearing their brand new backpacks, holding up signs that said things like, "Today I start third grade," or "Class of 2031. Or those pics of older kids, teenagers in high school who kind of wanted to make mom happy by posing for their first day of school photo, but who totally didn't think it was all that cool. And I have to say, I was stunned, and I'm talking like speechless, at the way the teenage girls were dressed for their first day of school. Listen, I'm no prude. I know that every generation has their style and fashion trends that make the previous generations, the older ones, roll their eyes and cringe. But this was different. This was seriously uncomfortable for me. The teenage daughters of my friends down in the Metro Detroit area were all dressed like hoochie mamas. And not just any hoochie mamas, but hoochie mamas that were heading out for a night at the bar. If you weren't aware, and I certainly wasn't, apparently teeny tiny midriff-bearing crop tops are all the fashion rage right now. And so are Daisy Duke shorts. Well, at least that's what we called them back in my day. And nearly every pic of a teenage girl that I saw had perfectly styled hair, lots of makeup, long gleaming polished nails, and minuscule tight tops that, if they were any more cropped, they would essentially be a bra. A few of them were cami-style tank tops, which actually did look like a bra or a sports bra. And one gal, a senior in high school, wore an off-the-shoulder, very sexy style crop top with very, very short, tattered, cut-off jean shorts that I would have been self-conscious in, even in my 20s, as a nightclub outfit. And the jean shorts these girls were wearing weren't simply cut-off jeans like the Daisy Dukes we had in my day. These were all super skin tight, like they were painted on. And I'm not joking. Two of the girls who were dressed like that in those kind of shorts with midriff-bearing crop tops were still in middle school, like 7th grade. I showed a few of those pics to my hubby, saying to him, "These poor girls, they look so trampy. How does the school even allow this? Don't you find it so sad that they all think they have to look over the top sexy for their first day of school? Whatever happened to subtle or just cool?" My husband shook his head and replied, "Wow, where are the fathers? Do any of these girls even have fathers? Because first and foremost, I can't imagine being a boy in school with those girls. How are they expected to concentrate or learn with that sitting beside them? The hormones are all raging at that age. A teenage boy is literally going to be thinking about sex with those girls all day long. I'm sure any father would know that. And women these days want to put all the blame on men? This is absurd. Then he said something that stayed with me the rest of the day. What's really sad is that's how girls see value in themselves these days, even the young ones. It's no longer about how athletic you are or how good at softball or basketball you are. It's not about the grades you get or the potential scholarships. It's not even about how funny or witty you are or how sweet you might be to everyone. In today's society, a girl rates her value and worth solely on a scale of 1 to 10 of how sexy they are. And that's it. It's all about sex. Ugh, yeah. Wow. That just so messed with my head. But then I started really paying attention to other social media posts with that thought sitting in there, marinating in my brain. Sure enough, I began to notice with greater clarity things that I tended to gloss over before. A gal my age who posted a duck face selfie. The ick factor though. Are duck faces even still a thing these days? And she had the camera held up so high and at the right angle, her cleavage was very clearly and very prominently visible. Another friend, some gal I met only once or twice before, posted a pic of her rear end in a full-length mirror with the caption, "Just because I have a nice booty doesn't mean you get the right to DM me marriage proposals." Huh? Again, so cringy. And then I began to really notice some of the other posts in my feed from people I know that just grieved my spirit for how misdirected and misguided they were. A guy, my age, nearly 50, who was out on his boat slamming beers, inviting people to come out and party with him because he had the best view around. Then his video clip panned to the neighboring boat that had a bunch of girls in bikinis dancing to music. Then there was a gal who posted a picture of her new hairdo. She went from blonde to black with pink streaks and posted a poll asking people what they liked better. And another post from a friend who was depressed and lonely and wondered if anyone could help give them advice as to how to get out from their funk. Another one who found out his wife had cheated on him and shared the whole drama in a series of posts. Another one was of a gal in her third marriage who, tackily, posted a close-up pic of her big diamond ring and asked everyone to guess how much it cost. A dude that I once worked with posts every single day rally cries for people to support Trump, insisting he's the only one that can save this country from ruin. Another post from a guy I never met but who my hubby knows shared how awesome and incredibly frightening some new horror movie is and dared everyone to watch it in the dark, alone. A relative of mine every single stinking day posts her daily horoscope for all to read. I could go on and on. You get the idea. You know what I see here, folks? I see a whole society of people who have no idea where to get their own self-value and self-worth. Their entire identity is wrapped up in either A, what other people think or say about them, or B, what they think or say about other people. And it all comes from social media, which comes from our phones. Just for kicks, I'm going to share a few statistics with you that will blow your mind. It did for me. These come from an article on the website Backlink that was published back in March of 2023 and cites various reputable sources. I pulled out only a handful, but if you want to see more, I'll include a link in the show notes of this episode. Out of the nearly 8 billion people in the world, almost 4.5 billion of them currently use social media. That number is more than double of what it was just 8 years ago, back in 2015. 93% of people who have access to the internet are on social media. Of all those 4.5 billion people who do regularly use social media, 99% of them access it via their smartphones. There are 3.5 billion people in the world who have smartphones, and another 2 billion or so that have a cell phone, which hypothetically could end up being traded in or upgraded to a smartphone in the near future. Either way, 5.5 billion individuals in this world own a mobile phone. Globally, the average time a person spends on social media a day is 2 hours and 24 minutes, so nearly 2.5 hours. And if someone signed up at 16 and lived to be 70, they would spend 5.7 years of their life on it. And think, there are people who spend way more time on it. In the United States, more than 72% of the total U.S. population actively use social media, totaling a number of roughly 240 million people. So let me ask you a hypothetical question. Imagine for a moment that I conducted a research study and had a cohort of people that I put into a solitary room for 3 weeks. And for 2.5 hours every day, I put a screen in front of them, only 12 inches from their face, showing them different clips of various people who all, in some form or fashion, showcased how eating tree bark was the ultimate trick to optimum health. Some were doctors and health nuts, giving scientific theories about the benefits of tree bark. Some were celebrities who endorsed eating tree bark as a healthy choice. Others were chefs, demonstrating how to prepare and cook tree bark in tasty ways. And then you had everyday regular people sharing their stories about how tree bark improved their lives, or made them more attractive, or gave them better mental health, or gave them the energy and drive to become wealthier and more successful. Now, at the end of that 3 weeks, how many would you say would walk out of that room completely believing that tree bark was something they should be partaking in too, if they want to live better lives? I'm going to guess nearly all of them. Now, imagine that experiment lasting 10 weeks or 10 months. How about 10 years? This, my friends, is a simple example of something called brainwashing. And I want you to understand that without even realizing it, our world has become a global society of people brainwashed to believe that their value, their self-worth, their self-respect, their happiness, and their success in all things, whether work, love, relationships, parenting, school, or money-making, all come from other people. Who they are on the inside is molded, formed, and shaped by what other people think, do, and say. And those people have been molded, formed, and shaped by other people as well. We're literally a bunch of people who look to others, primarily complete strangers we've never met, to give us our identity, our purpose, our value, and our beliefs. We have allowed ourselves to be completely influenced by often fake or embellished or glorified versions of perfection. And where does that almost always come from? Social media, which comes from our smartphones. So let's pause for a sec. Now, half the world's population spends, on average, 2.5 hours a day on social media, which is, on average, 15% of our day. Are you average? Or are you above average, or perhaps below average? Take an educated guess on how much time per day on average that you spend on social media. Now, I don't know about Android phones because I've always been an iPhone user, but on an iPhone, you can see precisely how much time you spend there. For transparency's sake, I'll tell you mine. Under your settings, there's a tab labeled Screen Time. Did you know that this metric was available to you? It keeps tabs on how much time you spend with your screen unlocked and visible to you, meaning you're actively engaged with your phone. Are you regularly monitoring this? If not, you should be. I just opened mine up, and it says my daily average screen time is 1 hour and 56 minutes. So we'll just round it up to 2 hours. Now, under the bar graph, there's a place that you can click to see all your activity. On that next screen, it'll break down your screen time by what kind of activity you're engaging in. Mine says entertainment, 44 minutes per day. Social, 27 minutes per day. Other, 22 minutes per day. If you look down below, it narrows it down even further. My entertainment is all YouTube. My social is primarily Instagram with a bit of Facebook. And my other is mostly Safari with a few minutes of my Notes app, which I often use to jot down thoughts, save links, or write out lists. So that might seem pretty good, but that's just my average. If I scroll back through the days, I'll see that some days are way more, and other days are less. And this doesn't count the content I listen to on YouTube when my phone's screen is asleep. Now, I don't ever watch shorts, which are the short-form reels that YouTube provides in clips that are 30 seconds or less. I divide my time on YouTube between church sermons and other content that interests me, like homesteading, gardening, economics, world news, or prepper videos. I have 2 personal private playlists that I use. One I called Bible Studies, and the other I simply labeled Watch Later. Every morning and evening, I'll scroll through my subscriptions feed and add videos to one of those 2 watch lists, and then I'll play them throughout the day. Sometimes I'm too distracted or not in the right mood for sermons, so I'll watch all the other stuff on my Watch Later list. Or some days, I'm just too weary of the real world stuff, and I'm hungry for the Word of God. I almost always have a pair of wireless earbuds in my ears, cheap ones that I bought on Amazon, but that work surprisingly well and have lasted a long time. But let's get back to our phones. I want you to see something for a second. Remember how in my previous episode I said that in his objective to bring down God's people and steal away humanity, Satan likes to imitate God, but uses a distorted, corrupted sort of alternative version of God's creation? You can see this when reading about the end times, when Satan rises up one man to be the Antichrist, who forces the world to worship him instead of Jesus. Ever go into one of those weird carnival fun houses with the mirrors, where every image of yourself is off-kilter and distorted in some way? It's you, but it's not really you. Your reflection is either super tall and skinny, or really short and fat, or warped in some other way. That's what Satan tries to do with the things he creates. It's all a warped, distorted imitation of God's real thing. Remember, Satan hates what God created, and he always wants to do and be and imitate God. And so what better way to go after God's people than to create a warped, distorted world that's a poor, lackluster, evil-filled version of the world that God created? So think about the internet, particularly social media. If you look at it objectively, like if you were able to time travel back to the 1800s and showed Facebook photos or Instagram reels or TikTok videos to someone living back then, what would they think? It's so realistic that I have no doubt they would believe, in complete shock and awe, I'm sure, that there was a miniature little world living inside your phone. Who do you think made that world? You know, when the Bible describes idolatry in both the Old Testament and New Testament, it almost always refers to actual idols, statues or created figurines that people worshipped and believed could provide them with blessing, protection, guidance, direction, affirmation, abundance, success, relationships, whatever. Like the golden calf that Aaron and the people made while Moses was up on the mountain, or the Asherah poles that the Canaanites worshipped to the goddess Asherah. All the numerous statues of the Greek and Roman gods and goddesses. But as modern-day humans, we tend to laugh at the thought of worshiping idols. Yeah, right. We're mostly too intelligent, too high-tech, too discerning to ever think that some kind of stone or wood statue would ever be worthy of worshiping, or would have the ability to provide us with all those things. I say mostly because there are still people in this world with Buddha statues, or statues of Mary in their yard as a shrine, or people who bury statues of St. Joseph in their ground in order to sell their home or provide them with some type of luck in real estate. But overall, we're smart enough to know that as a more evolved species, we don't have any illusions that some kind of carved statue or stone figurine can be an active God in our lives to do things for our benefit. But don't you think Satan has evolved along with us as well? Do you still think he's the Satan of the time of Adam and Eve, crawling around on his belly as a serpent, deceiving them by being a simple snake that could talk? Although, side note, that would be kind of wild to see that these days. But no, Satan didn't just throw up his hands and give up when the Industrial Revolution started taking place, forfeiting his battle and waving the white flag in surrender, saying, "Sorry, humans, you just became too smart and too wise for me to continue messing with you." Heck no. Satan is like an evil supernatural form of AI. He learns when we learn. He grows as we grow. The more we evolve, the more he evolves. God created this world, and we see from the first verses in Genesis that he called it good. So, as a result, Satan wants to destroy it. And I'd say he's doing a pretty good job of it. Just look at any inner city, any homeless camp, any swath of land that once contained beautiful forests and streams that are now laid bare to mining and monoculture farms, polluted and contaminated grounds and waters, rainforests logged, and animals that have gone extinct. And as he's ravaging God's good world, he's also creating his own world, encased in a small 6-inch by 3-inch box made of plastic, metals, tempered glass, and some electronic microchips. These boxes, our phones, have become the most widely worshipped idol in all of humanity. Our phones provide nearly all the hopes, dreams, aspirations, goals, emotions, affirmations, information, guidance, entertainment, relationships, values, morals, beliefs, insecurities, love, hate, experiences, successes, and failures of more than half the world's population. Do you know what an idol is at its core? The simple definition is anything or person that you believe with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength can provide you with the things that only God can truly provide. So think back to those social media posts I referred to earlier. The moms posting pictures of their daughters inappropriately dressed for school. The guy wanting to show off the party scene on his boat. The gal looking for acceptance and praise with her new hairdo. The other chick with the booty shot and the one with the cleavage shot, both looking for value in their sexuality. People who posted about their problems, their marriage issues, their heartache, their depression and loneliness. The relative who shares her horoscopes for that day, believing wholeheartedly every day that what it says is true. I could sit here for days and days, weeks and weeks, sharing different posts and reels and TikTok videos of people seeking affirmation, value, appreciation, wealth, success, love, guidance, direction, hope, healing, and 1,000 other things from and through the images they see on social media. They are on social media for primarily one of two reasons, either to be influenced by it or to influence others by it. And we carry this idol everywhere. It's always on us, by our side when we sleep, in our hands as we wake, in front of us as we eat and drink, our companion when we engage with others, traveling with us wherever we go. The first thing we do in the morning upon waking is reach for this idol. And the last thing we do before we fall asleep at night is put the idol on our nightstand within easy reach if we need it. Can you go without your phone for even a few days? How about a week? Do you feel positively unsettled and discombobulated when you leave for work or go out for the day and accidentally leave it at home? Now, don't think I'm sitting here on my high horse preaching to all of you. I'm not. I'm right there with you. 3 days ago, I had no idea what I was even going to write for this chapter. And then the Holy Spirit put this topic on my heart. I mean, this book is about imbalances that cause us to fall into addiction or some other kind of hard place in our lives. And this is a huge imbalance. Even the most devoted, devout Christian believers will look at their spiritual scale and probably feel horrified when they realize the time they spend with God on one side and the hours of time they spend with their little handheld idol on the other. The idol not made by Apple or Android, but by the enemy himself, who is utterly delighted that we fell for it. No, we don't worship false idols, we say. Yeah, right. Indeed, we do. It's funny. Many Christian believers know the verse from Matthew 24:24, where Jesus says, "For false messiahs and false prophets will appear and perform great signs and wonders to deceive, even if possible, the elect." Now, the elect means his faithful believers. Jesus tells us in the Gospels that in the last days, Satan is going to do something that deceives many, many people, including devoted Christian followers. And all this time, literally right up until these last couple of days, I would have thought this to mean something like aliens coming down from the sky that can shapeshift and turn water into fire and raise Elvis from the dead or something. But what is a Messiah? Another definition is Savior. And what's the definition of prophet? The word comes from the ancient Greek word prophetes, which literally means messenger of a god. Remember, Satan is sneaky, cunning, the ultimate deceiver. John 8:44 tells us that there's no truth in the devil. Everything that he does is manipulative, deceptive, and crafty. He carries out his slick, evil plans with trickery and dishonesty. He's not going to trick us with overt and obvious grand tactics like aliens out of the sky or raising people from the dead. Well, he actually will do this much later in the end times during the tribulation, but that's a whole other rabbit trail. No, this enemy doesn't play checkers. He plays chess. Don't you think he easily could have used big tech and social media moguls like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, and Mark Zuckerberg to perform great signs and wonders to deceive even the most faithful of Christ followers? Is there anything greater or more wonderful than the marvel of the internet or social media? After having it around for so long now, we tend to take it for granted. But again, let's time travel back to something more recent, like maybe the year 1972 or the year 1989. An iPhone 14 and everything contained within Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok would have been absolutely mind-blowing to people living back then. I'm not saying this is the only thing that Satan is going to do. Just like with spiritual attacks, I'm sure he's got a whole arsenal of evil, deceptive things planned for us in the future. But social media sure is a good one. It's the ultimate false religion that convinced more than 5 billion people now to have their own individual idols. Now listen, I'm not saying there isn't good content out there that we can access from social media on our phones. Of course there is. I had a lot of it in my feed. In this world, there is both good and evil. There are God believers and non-believers. The same holds true for Satan's world. Again, he is cunning and sly. He wouldn't create a false, fake, two-dimensional world that was all 100% evil, horrifically dark, overtly devilish. If that were the case, God's believers, his children, us, we wouldn't fall for that. Remember, we're the ones that he's going after. We're the ones with targets on our backs. He had to make it enticing, believable, sprinkle some God stuff in there so that we Christians couldn't see the man behind the curtain. The very last reel I looked at before I shut it all down still gives me the chills when I think about it. It's crazy. It wasn't anything dark or evil. It wasn't anything sinister. It was actually a reel of a pretty blonde 30-something mom who was emphatically stating that she was not going to let evil take over. She was going to stand up to the overt sexualizing of our kids. She was going to stand up against the woke nonsense. She was going to stand up for religious rights. She was going to keep her kids out of the system and homeschool them. She was going to resist any future mask or vaccine mandates. She was going to fight for Christian principles in politics. Yada, yada, yada. I watched it the first time, and every single thing she said I totally agreed with. And I was about to give it a thumbs up in support of her. But you know how reels will loop over and over and keep playing until you scroll down to the next one? Well, it looped and began playing again, and my thumb hovered there as I watched it the second time. And something didn't feel quite right. Her words were too perfect, too scripted. She didn't seem genuine. She hardly blinked. She was in complete control of every facial movement, every syllable, and the whole thing just felt very acted out. I felt uneasy then. Was she an actress? Was she even real? Maybe she was AI or something. But why? If my intuition was correct, why would she or someone even post that if it was faked or acting? Then a little voice in my head came up with a very possible answer. Because it's such an easy way to create a database of social media users and registered profiles of those crazy, right-wing, conspiracy Jesus freaks. Every single person who agrees with and likes this video gets imported into a list. Poof! They literally volunteered their name and profiles with very little effort on our part. And now we know who our direct opponents are. Yeah, friends, that freaked me out. Now, I'm not saying that's what it was, but it sure felt hinky to me. My spidey senses told me to back away, move on, shut it down. Between that and the whole wall-mounted underwear drawer email situation, I was more than done with social media. I didn't need it. In fact, I'd be way more balanced without it, I knew. I understand that it's not practical to live without your cell phone or the internet in today's day and age. My father-in-law is like that, and he gets all his news and information from CNN. Bless his heart. I don't want to be uninformed or unprepared, but neither do I want to subject my mind to the influence and brainwashing anymore. The key to finding my balance with this one is to ensure that my phone is just a phone, an object to make calls and send texts, and maybe watch a few YouTube videos here and there to increase my knowledge and awareness, but not to live with it as an idol. Here's what I want you all to know, friends. God's world is 3D. It's real. It's tangible. But Satan's world is 2D. It's a poor imitation of God's world. Remember that episode I did in mid-June about Islam versus Christianity and how Islam is a false religion? In that episode, I described the Quran as a poor forgery, a sloppy imitation of the Bible. Now, it's not a forgery or sloppy imitation to the nearly 2 billion Muslims who put their faith in it, but that's because they aren't intimately familiar with the real thing. Sure, Muslims will try to pull out a Bible story or some verse from Scripture and attack it as being contradictory or untrue. But their argument is weak because they haven't lived and breathed the real living word of the Bible. They have no true knowledge of it. Islam didn't start out as an explosion of Muslim believers. It grew slowly at first, but then exponentially increased from those first few generations of people who were deceived by the poor forgery. I'm not going to lie, I'm more than worried about today's youth. More and more they become separated and distant from God's real 3D world, becoming more and more familiar and comfortable with Satan's 2D world. Even if at some point social media succeeds in becoming some kind of 3D immersive experience, it's still all an imitation, a mimicry of God's real thing. The idol itself might change its shape or medium, but the worship will be stronger than ever, because humanity will have completely forgotten what the real thing is like. God's world cannot be imitated or replicated. Nothing Satan comes up with will come close. Think about it this way. Let me paint a picture for you. I'm writing this on a Sunday, and today was a gorgeous day. We had a deep blue sky with a few puffy white clouds. I wouldn't say the air was chilly, but cool might be a better word. In the shade, the breeze had a bite to it, but the sun was strong, so I went out and laid in my hammock to get some vitamin D. I had a tank top on, and as I laid there, gently swaying in the breeze, The sun's rays were absolutely delicious on my skin. Sometimes a cloud would pass over the sun, darkening everything in shadow for a few minutes. I'd stiffen from the immediate coolness on my skin, wishing I'd brought a blanket or a hoodie with me. But then the sun would brighten again, and goosebumps erupted on my flesh with the anticipation of the warmth that I knew was only seconds away. Then, in all its glory, the bright sun emerged from behind the clouds, strong and steady, showering me with its exquisite heat. The sun and I played this little cat and mouse game for about an hour as I listened to the geese flying overhead, our chickens pecking around the yard, and the buzzing of bees hovering around the ripening apples on our trees. This simple hour of being outside enjoying God's natural world was sublime in every way. It rejuvenated my soul and strengthened my immune system. It calmed my mind and it refreshed my spirit. Peeps, you can't experience that from inside the walls of an apartment or in the basement or holed up in your bedroom staring at a small screen. There are millions, maybe billions of images and videos of tranquil waters in an azure bay with a sandy beach, or the rushing power of a waterfall, or the brilliant hues of the northern lights, or the delightful face of an inquisitive raccoon, or the majestic soaring of an eagle, or the heartwarming scene of people donating time and money helping the needy, or the singing of a choir in a packed church on a reverent Christmas Eve. Do you really think pictures or videos do any of those things justice? There's a scene in one of my all-time favorite movies that really hits home with this concept. Ever see the movie Good Will Hunting with Matt Damon and Robin Williams? I'm talking about the bench scene where the therapist, Sean, the character played by Robin Williams, is sitting talking to the young genius prodigy, Will, who's played by Matt Damon. And in that scene, Sean exposes Will as a poser, essentially. It's a great scene. Will presumes to know everything because he's so intelligent and has read all the great works and studied all the great thinkers and philosophers. But in reality, he'd never set foot outside of Boston, never actually experienced any of those things that he pretended to know about. That's how so many of us are these days. Everyone thinks they're the next supermodel, or the next greatest chef, or best-selling author, or next crypto genius, or that they're the ultimate expert in science, medicine, parenting, politics, war, economics, education, or whatever else because they sat staring at their phone screen and consumed a bunch of content that in their minds is a substitute for the real thing. Sometimes we don't even know if the imitation is real or fake. As an avid cook, I often buy vanilla extract. It's not the real vanilla beans, it's just the extracted form of vanilla beans. And even then, the extract is often artificial imitation vanilla. Social media is a lot like that. It's imitation. It's artificial. It's all a front, an illusion. And it's all precisely what Satan had hoped humanity would fall for. An idol worthy of worship that pretends to give people everything they're longing for that only God can truly give. Let me put it to you this way, using the power of threes and alliteration. The devil's fake 2D world of social media leaves you with number 1, longing. The desire to be more, have more, see more, experience more, love more, and know more. Yet usually you come away not achieving or finding any of that. In fact, it really is the ultimate addiction. The longing for new hairstyles or a younger face, new clothes, new homes, new cars, a cooler job, exotic vacations, organized closets, a handier husband, cuter kids, a prettier garden, the trendy handbags, the toned body, the great singing voice, the slick dance moves, the amazing chef skills. Every reel, every short, every TikTok and Facebook post tells you that everyone else has those things, so shouldn't you have it too? The more you want, the more you try to get. But in the end, you end up with nothing more than a lot of screen time and probably a smaller bank account. Number 2, lust. Social media has given Satan the platform to sexualize everything. From old to young, rich to poor, every demographic, every economic status, every age, every location. He knows God hates sexual immorality, and so the more he can pervert and sexualize society, the better. In fact, he's winning when we're all so desensitized to it that we don't even shrug at it anymore. After all, it's the fashion, it's the trend, it's what everyone else is doing. It's the new norm. Just give in and leave nothing to the imagination. Duck faces, cleavage, scantily clad daughters at school, suggestive videos, perverse music, porn, OnlyFans, disappearing DMs, grooming kids, anal sex tutorials in school libraries, the LGBTQ movement, naked people on TV and movies, gay pride, sex, sex, sex. The more, the better. The raunchier, the better. And social media is there to nudge you closer to it and put it in your face as much as possible. And hey, if everyone else is going along with it, well, then that must mean it's the popular thing to do. Popularity gives people a sense of self-worth, and social media gives us the easy path to popularity. All you have to do is like and follow. Instead of being encouraged to go your own way or God's way, which the devil cunningly convinced people is despicable now, society has been brainwashed to follow everyone else. And guess who's leading the crowd down the wrong path? Yeah, the enemy. 3, loneliness. Satan wins when you feel like a lost, lonely loser. Getting crazy with the letter L right now. Big Bird ain't got nothing on me, folks. Seriously, though, on the surface, lots of people will say that social media makes them feel more connected, more social. After all, that's what it's called, right? But in all actuality, it just makes people feel lonelier than ever. No amount of emojis or likes can make up for or imitate the way a hug from your best friend feels. There's no camaraderie in the world like a group of women sitting together, talking and laughing. There's no bond like that of a man and a woman who are engaged in discussion with each other, eye to eye, no distractions. When you only superficially interact with others, or when you're watching others interact with each other while you're all by yourself in your flannel PJs, stuffing your face with chocolate-drizzled kettle corn, you're going to feel that solitude and seclusion and isolation deep in your veins. You know what I mean. And when you've cultivated a life where you're withdrawn and detached from others, engaging only in a virtual way, it's going to seriously mess with your spiritual balance and mental health. But now, let me give you the 3 L's of God's real, 3D, Christ-centered world that's aligned and balanced with Him. Number 1, living. Balance in God's real world allows you to live, like truly live. Now, I don't know about you, but there were times when I was in my late teens and early 20s, which was the mid to late 1990s, when I had an absolute blast in life. My brother-in-law was a Marine, an airborne paratrooper. I don't know what the official correct verbiage is for that, but he regularly jumped out of planes. He and his fellow Marines had a song that was their anthem. It was Fully Alive by Flyleaf. I first heard that song from him, and he explained that's how they felt when they were parachuting out of a plane. That song stuck with me all those years, and I'd mentally play it in my mind whenever I experienced those incredibly joyous, almost euphoric moments of feeling absolutely alive. You know what I'm talking about, especially us Gen Xers who grew up before the internet. We made memories of experiences and interactions and events that new generations will probably never understand, let alone experience. Bonfires and camping trips or vacations with friends, spending several days with each other, telling stories, laughing, singing, listening to music and hanging out, making memories and completely engaging in every way, all without a cell phone. No one ignoring you to take selfies, no one asking you to pose, or constantly snapping pics in order to get the perfect Instagram shot. No worries that you might end up in a video on somebody's news feed. No one cared what they looked like for fear of ending up in a permanent album on Facebook. Back in those times, when you fought with your siblings, you argued face to face, not via text with memes and emojis. When you shopped with friends, it was actually at a store or in the mall, not sending Amazon links back and forth. When you visited with family, it was in person, not over a group messenger thread. When you ate out, no one picked up their phone or interrupted debates with facts from Wikipedia or took loud, annoying calls at the table. Man, I could write for hours, days, about how good the times were before social media came along. We Gen Xers were the last generation before this new false religion of Satan's came onto the scene, steeped in the idolatry of our phones. It's so crazy to miss something that most people don't even realize they lost. Number 2, loving. Friends, do you even know how much love there is in this world? If you're here listening to this, I think you probably do. But many don't. They confuse lust with love and think that they both mean the same thing, but they definitely don't. In Satan's fake 2D world, the lure is pure lust. It's shallow, it's fleeting, it's unfulfilling. But aligned with God in his real world, you won't just experience true love, but you'll live in it and pour it out daily. Grace and mercy, they are the foundations of love, and they are both notably absent from social media. Online, everyone is quick to attack or point fingers or judge or condemn, but that's not true of real love. Now, I've said it before a few times that my hubby can sometimes ruffle my chicken feathers. On one hand, he's super jocular, lovable, and so awe-inspiring sometimes. Other times, though, he can be juvenile, lazy, and irresponsible. But do you know what? I have my faults too. I can be controlling, rigid, and moody. I can admit that, along with several other faults. The key to loving someone, and we'll talk about this more in another episode or chapter, is seeing them through God's eyes. It's no different than how God sees you or me. We're adorable, awesome, but seriously flawed sometimes. Yet God loves us anyway, so much that he's given us special invitation to his eternal retirement paradise provided by the blood of Jesus. Isn't that amazing? And once you have that understanding, you see all the good things as blessings from God, and you forgive and forget the flaws and the failures. Love keeps no scorecard. You know that old wedding verse that's always read during wedding ceremonies? It's from 1 Corinthians 14, verses 4 and 5. Love is patient. Love is kind. It does not envy. It does not boast. It is not proud. It does not dishonor others, and it's not self-seeking. It is not easily angered, and it keeps no record of wrongs. Doesn't that sound like the opposite of social media? You cannot love people like that when you're only seeing them in 60-character Twitter posts, or fleeting 15-second reels, or highly edited and scripted TikTok videos, or some perfectly posed selfie on your Facebook newsfeed. And you know what? They can't love you back that way. When you're appropriately balanced in this real world, love becomes the standard norm, not the elusive. And 3, God's world is lasting. This one is huge, my friends. How many memories can you make scrolling through a phone screen? How many memories can you stuff into your own brain by osmosis, looking at other people's memories? The answer is 0. Remember that statistic that said we spend on average almost 6 years of our lives on social media? Do you think that's a meaningful and impactful way to spend 6 years of your life? No way. It's no better than spending 6 years of your life in prison. It's literally doing nothing productive or worthwhile. What kind of lasting treasures are you storing up in heaven with all those hours of screen time? I can tell you that unless you're sharing the gospel with other people or legit praying for people who need prayer, all that time spent behind your phone screen mindlessly scrolling is amounting to hay or straw that will get burned up when Christ tallies up your earthly deeds that determine your rewards. If we look at our heavenly reward in the metaphoric analogy of an eternal retirement vacation, the deeds and actions that you do here in this life determine whether you get the luxury log cabin with the four-wheeler, the side-by-side, the hot tub, Land Rover, private chef, private airplane, and all-you-can-eat and drink menu of your choice, or the tent with a cot, a bicycle, and cans of Beanie Weenies. You know what I'm saying? Both still provide you with a beautiful, eternal vacation of fun and relaxation, but you literally have an opportunity in this life right now to bank all the rewards points so that you can be awarded the VIP experience. Why would you waste your time on social media when you can be doing so much more? You are choosing to forfeit time and opportunity to store up your treasures in heaven for a promised eternal reward. And instead, you're putting all your faith into false hopes and false promises that the devil has tricked you into believing are real. It's all an illusion designed to lure you away from that everlasting, eternal reward. At the end of the day, this is just another form of spiritual attack. Only this time, instead of an individual attack, it's a weapon of mass destruction. This is what ultimately led me to shut it all down. It's not that difficult to see gambling addiction as a spiritual attack, right? It's extremely dark and hopeless and leaves you full of despair. I said before that gambling addiction felt like a black cancer that just ate away at my soul. But social media and online interaction is so much more subtle. Don't let that subtlety fool you, though. I have this in the number 2 spot because imbalance with your self-esteem, self-assurance, self-awareness, and self-confidence due to social media influence can make you think that you're doing good things for yourself, but you're only damaging yourself over and over and over in ways that you don't have enough eye ointment to see. I know sure as Shinola I didn't. It's like death by 1,000 microcuts. It slices apart the whole of who you are. And if you don't have the wisdom to see what's real and what isn't, you'll never be able to have an authentic relationship with God. Now, I know this sounds a little contradictory, but when you have all of your self stuff in balance, then you're able to focus more on the things outside of yourself. For a Christian, that means God and other people. If you're not a Christ believer, this means all those other things that should be more important in your life than the false sense of security and pleasure that you get from social media. Whether you believe it or not, social media is the devil's world. So, what's the answer? What's the solution to this one? Now, listen, friends, this whole book is about balance. It's not about extremes, remember? We live in a modern world with modern technology, and it's not practical to give it all up completely. It's not living if you bug out into the woods and live off the grid like the Amish do, completely oblivious to any and all technology, not interacting with the world. Yeah, there are a lot of homesteaders that do precisely what I talked about in the last episode. They listened to Jesus when he said, "Come out of her, my people," meaning the house of Satan, the system of Satan, and the world and society that Satan created, Babylon. They moved out of the city and bought some land and went and lived off the grid. But guess what? I know about most of them because they have blogs or YouTube channels. Off the Grid with Doug and Stacy is a great example. They were once a family who lived in the city, in one of the many neighborhoods of Satan's Babylon. but they bought some bare land in Missouri and now live off the grid. Yet they have a large YouTube following. The hardest thing about all of this is the FOMO, the fear of missing out. I get it. I mean, it's a lot like excluding from casinos. It takes guts and courage to take that permanent step to remove yourself from the things that your brain has been trained to rely on, to depend on, and to engage with every day. Things that brought you a false sense of security and satisfaction. I had a teeny tiny split second of regret when I deleted my social media accounts. But I found so much great Christian content on Instagram. And what about the photos of family that I won't see on Facebook? But let's be honest here. Well, let me be honest here, and maybe you can follow. No pun intended there. Yes, I definitely did watch a ton of really moving, inspirational Christian content on Instagram. But truthfully, I also watched a lot of silly time waster videos. Maybe 1 out of every 10 reels I sent my hubby were motivating, positive, or inspirational. But the others were funny cat videos, or husband and wife prank videos, or old school breakdancing and rap music. And Facebook? Don't even get me started with that one. Am I really going to try and say that I'm just there to see pics of my nieces and nephews, or stay in touch with family? No, peeps. In all honesty, Facebook is the epitome of the train wreck that you can't look away from. It's the place you go to feel better about yourself when you see pics of other people's houses that are messier than yours, or when that old friend from high school you're connected with is looking older than you. It's the place you go to sit back and eat popcorn while you watch people argue in groups that you don't even know. I once spent an hour reading the comments about whether people should say Holy Ghost versus Holy Spirit. And let me tell you, it got a little heated. It's the place you go to stalk, to lurk, to judge people. And that's not me. That's definitely not who I ever want to be. I'd like to think I do my best to encourage people, build them up, support them, offer them hope and healing. And I didn't like the direction my thoughts would take me when I saw 75% of the content there. It wasn't worth the 25% of God content or good content I got in between. You know where else I can go for God content? Yeah, that's right, the Bible. So what's the practical solution? It's this. I'm not saying in order to have a more balanced life with a stronger spiritual armor that you have to shut down all of your social media. But keep the ointment on your eyes. Listen to the nudges when your spirit tells you you're watching or engaging in something that you shouldn't. Listen to your subconscious mind when you start to realize that you're being influenced or brainwashed. 1 Peter 5:8 says, "Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour." So keep your guard up. Put boundaries and parameters in place. You know that screen time spot I showed you on the iPhone? There's a place where you can set limits, very similar to online casino player limits. You can designate 30 minutes a day or 5 hours a week or whatever for those social media apps. It's not easy to discern these days what's real from what's fake, even to a wise person. The best way to ensure that you don't become tricked into worshiping the images and videos on your phone is to limit the time you spend there and always be on your guard. Take control over the content you see and interact with. If someone is making you see things or feel things or believe things that you know you shouldn't, then unfollow or unfriend. If they don't like it, tell them it's nothing personal, but you're limiting the content you see on your feed. Or do what I did and just pick one app to engage in. For me, it's YouTube. I like it best because it requires very little interaction. I don't need to have conversations or comment or engage with anyone. The content tends to be of higher caliber because content creators put time and effort into building their channels and creating their videos. Plus, I can choose what I watch by building my own playlists. I had no control over what my eyes saw or my ears heard on Instagram and Facebook, and I didn't like that. Psalm 115 verses 2 through 8 says this: Why do the nations say, "Where is their God?" Our God is in heaven. He does whatever pleases him. But their idols are silver and gold, made by human hands. They have mouths, but cannot speak, eyes, but cannot see. They have ears, but cannot hear, noses, but cannot smell. They have hands, but cannot feel, feet, but cannot walk, nor can they utter a sound with their throats. Those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them. I'm going to reiterate that last part again, and as I do, think about it in the context of social media posts, videos, and pictures. They all have the attributes of real human beings, but they are just likenesses. They aren't real people. The mouths on the screen say what the recording captures them saying. They have ears, hands, and feet, but can't use them in ways other than what's shown on the screen because they are only 2D versions of the real living people. The screen does not have a heartbeat, a spirit, a brain, and it's not a living creature created by God, made in his image. They are all flat, dead versions, facsimiles, reproductions made in Satan's image. I know some might think this takes things a little too far, but take it from someone who's lost their entire life savings thanks to flashy fake icons and fake money on a screen. Those who make them will be like them, and so will all who trust in them. I know there are a lot of people out there who trust in that content who don't have the eyes to see it for what it really is, the fake from the real, whose ears don't discern the truth from the false, whose mouths can't speak anything of real value. They can't smell the forged replica of God's perfect world. And even though they have hands, they can't feel the real emotion or hold on to the real memories. And when they fall hard for the tricks of the enemy, their throat cannot even utter a sound because they, long ago, forgot how to cry out to God for help. Dear listeners, you can't remain upright and standing strong when your eyes are closed and your ears are plugged and you can't feel anything anymore. And you cannot firmly balance if you're constantly trying to measure up. God bless. Stay safe. And I'll see you next week when I read Chapter 3, The Imbalance of Self-Importance.